Hey everybody, it's Mr. Metaverse, also known as Aragorn. I am from the Netherlands, and my good friend Arun has asked me to provide a webinar for the Meta Pharmacy event taking place over these weeks. This is for you on next Sunday. Unfortunately, I won't be able to make it live, but I invite each and every one of you to reach out to me on LinkedIn or other social media if you have questions afterwards. When the event is done, I will also make this video available on my YouTube channel for everybody else in the world to enjoy and to take inspiration and insights from, because ultimately my mission is to inform everybody about the future we're heading into, how technology and humanity are related, specifically how artificial intelligence and the metaverse play a role in that. With that having said, I would just like to dive in. I only have about 20 minutes and I want to make the most of it. My first question: how old is humanity? The answer to that question is that the scientific consensus is that humanity is about 200,000 years old. That is to say, 200,000 years ago, we transitioned from other hominid species like Homo erectus, etc., into Homo sapiens, the upright, walking, thinking human. So then the next question we should ask is, how old is civilization? And I would say that civilization starts more or less the moment we transitioned from hunter-gatherers, nomads, to a more settled species. So when did we start to create settlements? When did we start farming? When did we lay the foundations for civilization and technological progress in a more structured manner? And the answer to that is between 30 and 12,000 years ago. So general consensus in science is that about 12,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution kind of finished up. And revolution is a little bit of a weird word for something that took place over more than 10,000 years. But yeah, there you have it. I think that has to do with the human cognitive bias when it comes to thinking about the past. When we think about the past, we don't really feel that massive ocean of time that passes. And so we condense all of it into one single point in time, right? Everything that happened in the past is just one thing in our brain. That's how we think about these things. That is also the problem with the human brain. We think very linearly and we don't really comprehend these kind of things. So even though we've barely been alive for, in my case, 41 years, the comprehension of the fact that the agricultural revolution, the transition from hunter-gatherers to farming, etc., and settlements took more than 10,000 years, it's just hard for us to comprehend. But there you have it. 12,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution more or less ended. When you put that on a timeline, it looks something like this. Now, I have a great story about how I did this with ChatGPT, but I don't really have time to go over all of that. And I'm sorry, it's not so beautiful. But this is the agricultural revolution. It took 6,000 years for us to invent the wheel. Yeah? As far as archaeological finds go, we seem to have invented the wheel around 5,500 years ago. Crazy. It's just crazy, because that means that for nearly 6,000 years, we did any form of farming, any agricultural development without wheels. Just think about that. It took another 1,500 years to get to the Iron Age, where we started melting iron and creating metal tools. And then, of course, another 1,500 years to get to 1450, where Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, which was a seminal moment in human history, because it meant that for the first time we started to disseminate information much faster throughout the world, because we were able to very cheaply put information on paper that could also be properly stored for us to spread information across the planet. And that was a big step up, because before that time, copying any type of information required hours and hours, days, weeks, months of work by monks who would then write the whole book. So it was not just complicated and a lot of work, it was also very expensive. And that led, of course, to the Enlightenment and then the Industrial Revolutions, of which we've had 4 so far. And if you know all of that, then you can conclude that 99.999% of all science and technology basically was invented and created in the past 250 years. And as I've shown you, humanity in our current hardware update has been around for 200,000 years. That means that all of 99.99% of technology and science was invented in the last 0.1% of human history. And that looks like this. I know this is a professional graph. You can laugh. We're somewhere around here right now, right? So we're already on this upward trajectory, which is the knee of the curve in terms of exponential change. This is the Industrial Revolutions kicking off around here. Cleopatra was around 2,000 years ago, 2050. And then the pyramids of Giza were more or less 4,500 years ago. That means that Cleopatra lived closer to ChatGPT than the construction of the pyramids of Giza. And that is crazy when you think about it. That also means, and you can see that in this graph, that between the construction of the pyramids of Giza and Cleopatra, almost nothing changed in the world, right? Cleopatra's life was pretty much the same as life was for the pharaohs that erected the pyramids, apart from the size of the empire, etc. The way they made clothing, the way they fought, the food they ate, all of that was pretty much unchanged for over 2,000 years at that point. And that just highlights the massive amount of change that occurred in the past 250 years.
Now let's meet someone who can bring a little history to us. Her name is Mrs. Florence Pannell, and she's 108 years old. You ever been in an aeroplane?
Never.
What's the biggest change of all you've seen?
The biggest change? Everything. Nothing is the same. Everything is changed.
Yeah, I find this absolutely wonderful. This is Miss Florence Pannell. What a wonderful woman she must have been to talk to. She lived for 108 years, and in 1977, she told us that everything changed in her lifetime. And this is relevant because it just goes to show that even in her lifetime, when the technological progress was actually a lot slower than it is today, everything changed in her single lifetime. And so I'm here to tell you that over the next few decades, over the next few years, even 5 years, everything's going to change. We're going to see exponential change in basically every aspect of life. Now, buildings might not be all torn down. Some basic infrastructure, these kind of projects that take years to construct, will be largely unchanged. But everything else, everything that is more transitory, like technologies that we use, for example, my earbuds or phones or the medicines that we take, or the technologies available to doctors to help us, all of those are going to change at a incredible rate over the next 5 years, to the point where it will be hard to comprehend looking back how so much could have changed. And I know that's something that's hard to understand now, but as you'll see, it's just very likely. Now, what's powering all of this? Largely, most of that is powered by our incredible change in computational power, right? And this is a logarithmic scale that you can see here. And in 1935, we could get about 1/1,000,000th computation for a single US dollar corrected for inflation. And then if we go up around here, you see between 100 and 1,000 calculations for $1 at the end of the 80s. Which is, I was born in 83. This is where I got my Commodore 64. And then in the 90s, it went up to about 1,000. And then at the end of the 90s, I think we were around 10,000. In the early 2000s, 100,000. But it keeps going up exponentially. So in 2024, we get 1 trillion calculations for a single US dollar corrected for inflation. That means that in the last 90 years, we've gone up 1,000,000 trillion times in terms of how much calculation we get for a dollar. It's incredible. It's unbelievable if you just think about that. On top of that, we've done something else incredible. After 2001 was the first year that humanity actually acquired and stored more information, data, in a single year than in the entire human history. And then for every single year afterwards, we've doubled that amount of information. We've doubled that amount of data. And this is a chart of artificial intelligence models and the amount of data used to train them. And it's a logarithmic scale. So back in the 90s, we had about 100 billion flops. Right now, we're sitting at over 20 billion petaflops for models. And this is still going up, right? This is scaling up orders of magnitude every year. And it's that combination of our 1,000,000 times a trillion increase in compute and our 1,000,000 times a trillion increase in available data that is powering the current revolution in deep learning, machine learning, artificial intelligence models that is revolutionizing every science, every industry around the world. And the reason that this can happen is what Ray Kurzweil calls the law of accelerating returns. So basically, he says that information technology, specifically, other technologies as well, but not always, but especially information technology, benefit from the law of accelerating returns, meaning that every invention, every upgrade basically accelerates the creation of new and better inventions, right? For example, we're using computer chips today to develop chips. and make chips on our computer. Now, a few years ago, the chips would be designed by humans only. But now we're already using artificial intelligence to design new chips. So we're seeing that technology created with the technology from last year is improving the creation of technology of next year. And that goes on so forth and so forth, accelerating itself. And basically, that is why we now have something I call Moore's Law 3.0. So the original Moore's Law in 1965 said we double the amount of transistors on a chip die every 2 years. That was then changed to about every 18 months. Then at the end of the 80s and the 90s, Moore's Law changed already that it represented how much compute we create with the transistors. So not specifically the transistors, but how much we increased computational power with our chips. And now we're at the point where basically Moore's Law 3.0 is the combination of our computational power plus the data, which has led to artificial intelligence, and the artificial intelligence is increasing how we can process the data. So artificial intelligence is actually increasing how fast and efficiently we can compute, right? And an example of this is NVIDIA's DLSS technology, which allows you to use your GPU to generate three-dimensional images. But just by adding DLSS to it, which is an artificial intelligence, we can almost double the amount of frames generated. So we doubled the amount of computational power the chip has by using an AI algorithm to process the information. And so this has led to what Mustafa Suleiman called on Twitter in 2023, the fact that if you apply Moore's Law to artificial intelligence, we've basically seen 50 years of Moore's Law in just 10 years, because every single year we've been running at multiple times Moore's Law for artificial intelligence over the last decade.
In 5 years, we improved the computer graphics by 1,000 times. Using artificial intelligence and accelerated computing. Moore's Law is probably currently running at about 2 times. 1,000 times in 5 years. 1,000 times in 5 years is 1,000,000 times in 10. We're doing the same thing in artificial intelligence.
Yep, there you have it. This is Jensen Huang, CEO of, I think, the third most valuable company in the world today, but NVIDIA even shortly was the most valuable company in the world there. All as a result of their domination of the AI chip market.
Certainly got to 2029, these computers will know everything that human beings will know. We're going to expand that at an unprecedented rate in terms of scientific progress. So by 2045, we'll expand what we know at least 1 million times, which is quite hard to understand.
So this is Ray Kurzweil, of course, the writer of the book The Singularity is Near. For years, he wasn't taken seriously. He's the head of engineering at Google. People really underestimated him for a long time, but now we're starting to come into a point where people see that this guy has been right about so many things for so long. So another thing I wanted to touch upon, because of course this whole keynote webinar is also about medical changes and how they will be changing. And this is a technology that's being rolled out much faster than I anticipated. Last year I thought it would take 2 to 3 years, but it took less than 6 months for this to become mainstream. And let's have a look at this, and then I'll explain why it's relevant.
Hey, sure.
ฉันอยู่ที่ประตู 6 สวมเสื้อสีเทา
I'll pick you up in 2 minutes.
So this might just seem some really funky consumer tech, but the implications here are very big. This means that anybody in any language can basically speak to anybody, and this kind of technology will be quickly rolled out across every means of digital communication. And that means that where doctors in the past were limited to their country, doctors can now basically go anywhere and speak a language without the need for an interpreter. Right? We're going to see even more implementations of this in technologies that will make it even easier to interact. And it's not just doctors. This also allows artificial intelligence online to basically help patients with anything in any language, because it will be able to understand them perfectly. So in terms of optimization, and this is what is relevant, if we're looking at the world today, the medical industry is struggling everywhere because they have shortages of personnel, etc. But this allows us to, in the next decade, to scale in a way that allows for much better optimization. And although this might not initially happen straight away internationally, ultimately that will happen. And I think that is a relevant development to look forward to. That means that a doctor from the Netherlands can effectively help somebody in Thailand without there being a language barrier.
This is the construct.
The following is a conversation with Mark Zuckerberg inside the metaverse. Mark and I are hundreds of miles apart.
So I'm just going to turn the volume off here for a second. But this is Lex Friedman talking about how he's in the metaverse with Mark Zuckerberg. And the reason I'm showing this is because I also want to highlight that before I showed how language barriers will dissipate over the next decade through technology, making doctors and medical help to be available anywhere between anyone from any nationality, technically, right? But this is the next step as well. In the future, we will have things like doctors, even artificial intelligence doctors, that you can meet as a person in virtual reality. So let's say that you're suffering from certain kind of thing and you want to talk to somebody about it. You won't necessarily have to leave your home, but you can actually go into VR to speak to a doctor. Now, this, of course, will not be valuable for every type of affliction or ailment, but imagine specifically, for example, mental health. This can be an incredible way to allow people to go into therapy, to talk to somebody or get medical support, even in the most remote of locations. Because, for example, if you combine this with Starlink, you could roll this out to villages in the middle of nowhere, even where you could put a Starlink down, hook a virtual reality headset up, and basically allow a doctor remotely from some city to take interview with every single patient there and do diagnoses of their health condition without having to physically be there. Now, here's another interesting technology I think that will be very relevant for medicine as well. The woman on the left, top left, she's a gamer and she's playing a game just simply with her mind. She's using EEG headset. And on the bottom right, Nolan Orbaugh here, who's actually the first Neuralink patient to have a chip installed in his head here, which allows him to control through Bluetooth his computer, and he's actually playing Super Mario Kart here. But this is also very relevant because this just highlights how artificial intelligence is allowing us through different means to read the information from our body, right? In this case, it's all about reading the information from our brain. Nolan Orbaugh literally has a chip in his brain. Ultimately, of course, I think that 20 years from now, most of us will move in that direction, even if we're not quadriplegics. But even something like the headset here at the top, the EEG headset that she has, might become increasingly relevant as AI will be increasingly capable of using these type of devices to understand what's going on inside the human body and help with diagnoses and prescribing for treatments, etc. And proof of how advanced this is actually right here, because what you're seeing here is images shown to patients, and then at the bottom you see the image interpreted by artificial intelligence. So basically the artificial intelligence is decoding the signals that it's reading from the brain. So it will come as no surprise that companies like Meta and Apple have already filed patents for this next generation of user interfacing where people might be able to control their phones with their minds. But of course, this also brings along potential for medical science, because imagine if you have an app that uses the sensors in the Apple earbuds or the Meta earbuds that you'll have 5 years from now to read the state of your brain when you're having COVID or when you're having the flu, and then imagine extrapolating that to doing it for millions of people. You get really relevant data that will then allow medical institutions and doctors to do diagnoses much faster and better, to know what's going on with people, and to even early on through, of course, autonomous data sharing on these platforms, identify, for example, pandemics and such.
Human beings have dreams. Even dogs have dreams, but not you. You are just a machine, an imitation of life. Can a robot write a symphony? Can a robot turn a canvas into a beautiful masterpiece? Can you?
The reason I still have this video in my keynote is because it so eloquently highlights the cognitive bias that humans have in terms of our superiority. We believe that we are the supreme being on Earth or the universe even, and that we are something distinct from nature, that we are something separate from nature, that we can do things that no other creature can do. But I think that as we'll see over the next 2 decades, artificial intelligence will prove that we are so wrong about that. Not only will it prove that by in and of itself reaching intelligence levels that we never thought possible before, and therefore confronting us with the fact that intelligence is not as limited or unique to us as we thought, but it's also opening up the way for us to communicate with nature and see that intelligence, in fact, is all around us. We've just not been able to hear it so far. But as AI will translate what elephants say and how they communicate, as it is allowing us to talk to whales and dolphins, we will start to realize that there's so much intelligence around us and that we can reconnect with nature. And of course, this will also be very relevant for medical science, ultimately in so many ways. Even AI right now, right at the start of this year, we were at AI models that had 100 IQ score. And IQ is not scientific, I know that, but it's a heuristic that's valuable. This is the median, right? 100 IQ for humans. But the best AI models right now are already at 125 to 130. And by my estimate, next year already, we will see models that exceed this. That will be at an IQ of 160, basically being smarter than the smartest human being to have ever lived. And that means that all of these models will be at that point, right? So this is very significant to take into account. If you look, for example, at medicine, this is already a test results from last year where GPT-4, which is already an outdated model at this point, let's face it, because we have GPT-4o and we have o1 preview now and o1 very soon. Claude 3.5 far exceeds the capabilities of GPT-4. So on this MedQA test, which is a medical test that all medical professionals have to take in the United States to become a doctor, all the GPT models already outscored the models that were specifically developed for this in the years prior. And they also outscore most humans, right? Because a doctor can have something to drink the night before or had a fight in the morning with their partner. And so they will be underperforming or they just didn't get enough sleep. But GPT and the current AI models all already score above 90% almost all the time, outperforming human medical professionals. At the same time, these chatbots already outperform doctors in answering patient questions in accuracy and empathy. And I think this is very important because even if you argue that AI cannot feel, the fact that AI can communicate to you in a way that makes you feel good and feel that they have empathy, that's really all that matters. And so this just ties into my belief that we'll see very rapidly medical environments being filled with all types of artificial intelligence applications to deal with patients, to help diagnose, to give them results, etc., complementing doctors at first and ultimately in 15 to 20 years, I think that basically all human doctors will be replaced. And if you don't think that this is possible, just look at what's already happening. So this is Klarna, who already used GPT to augment their customer service. They had 700 full-time agents added, which were GPT-4 powered, and that led to a 25% drop in repeat inquiries. Conversations were reduced from 11 minutes to 2, and this AI was available in 23 markets, communicating in 35 languages, and was rolled out 24/7. So this is also the future that the medical world has ahead of it, where AI agents will be doing so much of the heavy lifting in terms of patient interactions.
Your Fax AI assistant. How can I help you today?
Yeah, hey Sophie, this is Patrick. I'm wondering if you can help me with my most recent order. I think I might have got the wrong size.
I'm sorry to hear that, Patrick. I'd be happy to help. Is this about the Saks Fifth Avenue Collection cashmere baseball bomber sweater you purchased on September?
I'm going to pause it there. Of course, what we're looking at here is customer service for a consumer good for retail. But this is new technology being rolled out by Salesforce called Agentforce. And the relevance here for the medical world is, of course, that also hospitals are going to very rapidly be rolling out this type of technology. Just think about it. How much time is spent by the assistants on talking to patients, calling back patients, informing patients, telling patients about what the report was that they got from the hospital for their checkup, etc. All of that can be automated. by an AI that will, as we've just seen, be more empathetic than any doctor could ever be all the time, never have a bad mood, and even be better at explaining the actual report and the diagnoses. Now, of course, people are going to be hesitant, specifically doctors are going to be initially hesitant to do this because they're super afraid that something will go wrong. But as you'll see very rapidly, this technology will allow for very accurate kind of handling of these kind of things. And that means that people will be able to have this kind of conversation with an AI agent. And that will first be just to inform them about things, but ultimately it will even lead into a diagnosis on the phone where the AI is asking patient questions. And this will be rolled out over the next 5 years. I'm pretty sure we'll see this becoming pretty major over the next decade. So in the 80s, this is what life looked like, right? This was before the smartphone. This is where we carried all of this technology with us. But today, in today's world, this is what the world looks like. This is brain-computer interface, right? And these brain-computer interfaces, yes, you call them smartphones, but they're basically allow us to outsource so much of what we do. This kind of device that we carry with us all the time that collects all of our information. And as we move forward with technology, we'll see that this device, the brain-computer interface, which is the phone, will be augmented more and more by other devices. Like, for example, the Meta Ray-Bans that we've already seen being rolled out to great success across the world because it's just such an incredible device. Not only does this device allow you to share whatever you're seeing with an artificial intelligence or a doctor, for example. So let's say that my mother is sick, I'm wearing one of these glasses, I call with the doctor and the doctor can literally see what I'm seeing. And the doctor can then instruct me on how to check certain things with her to add his diagnoses. And you can think of how this could be so incredible to allow for much better medical support, medical services for people remotely. And we're not even talking about how AI can be integrated with this, because I think that ultimately 5 to 10 years down the road, everybody will have glasses like these or even more advanced. And there will be an AI integrated that will have all medical knowledge available to it, that will be capable of literally guiding your own attempts at diagnosing somebody with whatever is going on, wherever you are, even if you're not trained as a doctor.
About a decade ago, I started putting together a team of the best people in the world to build these glasses.
So what you're seeing here are the Orion glasses being developed by Meta. Of course, this is not a consumer product yet, but this is the future of wearables. So not only will we have artificial intelligence in every digital device we carry with us, and we will have access to internet all over the world thanks to things like Starlink, but on top of that, the wearables that we have will be able to experience or see the world around us through cameras and through other sensors, and that all will be tied into an artificial intelligence, which will have the capability to project images straight into our eyes, because these augmented reality glasses allow that artificial intelligence of the near future to show us what's going on. So you might be doing a diagnosis on your mother or your father or whatever somewhere, and you're not a doctor, but the AI can literally tell this is where you need to feel, or this is where you need to push, or this is what you need to check, or the temperature of somebody, even that, right? Because you already have AI now on your phone, or AI capabilities on a phone that can allow you to basically film your face, and then the AI will be able to determine the blood flows through your face through infrared and even determine the temperature that you're having. So it can even see if you have a fever, stuff like that, right? So all of this technology is going to be increasingly rolled out and combined with artificial intelligence and with these wearables, allowing for a completely new kind of medical experience and support in all kinds of locations around the world. Yeah, so this is a GIF I got off the internet a few years ago, and I still love it because it completely highlights how our world is changing very rapidly, and everything ultimately will be in a pair of glasses. So, to recap, smartphones, smartwatches, smart glasses are brain-computer interfaces, and combined with artificial intelligence, we're seeing an age of personal augmented intelligence, and that will also absolutely revolutionize the medical industry. And this, I believe that this will transition us to a new step in evolution where Homo sapiens basically becomes Homo nexus or Homo deus or whatever you want to call it, where we augment our own intelligence with artificial intelligence through brain-computer interfaces. Yeah, so whenever people tell you that the AI hype is over, I think they just don't really understand what's going on in the world. The AI hype is absolutely not over. It's just getting started because most of the actual benefits of AI, most of the implementations of this technology and the benefits that we get from it, we haven't even seen those yet, right? That's a problem with today's world where social media spreads the news so fast that everybody knows about AI and everybody thinks they've already seen what it can do because they've checked out ChatGPT or they tried Midjourney or they use Ideogram or they tried Napkin. But the truth is that these are just the surface layer applications of artificial intelligence. And the real benefits, for example, the fact that we found 200 million new protein structures or we found 2 million new materials that can be used, for example, to create surgical apparatus or tools. None of that is really known yet. The fact that we can create bandages with new materials that will be hyper effective at keeping wounds clean, for example, stuff like that, we haven't even seen that yet. That's only to come out over the next few years, the next decade, and therefore the AI hype, in my personal opinion, hasn't even really begun yet. People just have no idea yet what's on the horizon.
Hey, Figure One, what do you see right now?
I see a red apple on a plate in the center of the table, a drying rack with cups and a plate, and you standing nearby with your hand on the table.
Great, can I have something to eat?
Sure thing.
Yeah, so this is Figure 1, and actually, interestingly enough, this is the last iteration. There's already a Figure 2 robot, which is powered by ChatGPT, and this just goes to show the future that we're heading into, because right now people already blown away by AI and generative AI, and people are impressed just by the fact that AI can create pictures. But like I said, the true implications of AI are not even scratching the surface yet. AI will be powering robots like this, right? There's more than 12 companies around the world that are developing humanoid robots like this that will hit the markets over the next few years. And just to give you an indication, this is the Unitary G1, and somebody I know has actually ordered one of those, so I'll be seeing that probably this year or start of next year. It's $16,000 US. Now, I'm not saying that this robot is going to provide surgical operations to humans, right? But there's some robots here, like the Optimus from Tesla and the Figure 1 that's in here as well. Or is it Figure 2 already here, actually? These are super, super advanced humanoid robots. And these robots will very rapidly develop skills where they can outperform humans by a margin. Because these are robots, so they can get software updates, right? Every one of these robots, even if you buy one today that can barely walk around the room without bumping into a chair, they're better than that, but let's say, they can get one update and then they can be super, super good at all of that. And this is what you need to realize, is that this technology is progressing at a very rapid pace. These robots will be capable of very impressive things very rapidly. And so ultimately, I believe that we'll see probably within a decade, we'll see that human doctors will start being replaced by robots increasingly, first for small things, but ultimately, I think that even as a result of insurance companies prohibiting it, we will no longer see humans doing any operations. Surgeons will be replaced because having a robot do it with AI will probably be orders of magnitude safer than having a human do it. And I think that this will be something that's very hard to swallow for medical professionals today, but this is absolutely the future that we're heading into. Okay, this is another one that I really love. This just shows how AI is revolutionizing diagnoses. It's already being used to analyze mammograms, to detect potential breast cancer in women years and years ahead, which is, of course, very great and important. It's being used to detect heart and vascular diseases, cardiac events, for example, due to coronary inflation, at least 10 years in advance, all due to AI, better than any human could ever do it. And that leads us then, we're coming to the end here, but this is Demis Hassabis, head of Google DeepMind, and this is what he had to say about it. So he's been working on AI for medical purposes, like, for example, AlphaFold, which has been used to identify 200 new protein structures that can be used in medical science to create new kind of medicines, cancer cures, etc.
I think we could cure most diseases within the next decade or two if AI drug design works. And then there could be personalized medicines where it minimizes the side effects on the individual because it's mapped to the person's individual illness and their individual metabolism and so on. These are amazing things.
So here he says something interesting. He says, if AI drug design works, but actually this video has been recorded several months ago, and since then there's already been other videos from actual medical doctors using AI for drug design that have been very positive, that literally said, look, first I thought show me the data, and then I saw the data and it's extremely compelling. So I think that at this point we can already establish that AI drug design does work. Therefore, I'm pretty confident to state that within the next 10 years we'll probably solve most of the 200 different kinds of cancer that are in the world. We'll solve things like Parkinson's disease. We'll find ways to cure dementia and how to prevent it. And I think we're really in for an incredible ride in terms of medical science being revolutionized over the next decade. So this is something I mentioned earlier. This is also from last year, as you see, November 2023. Millions of new materials discovered with deep learning. This is also done by Google DeepMind. Also, Microsoft has some really interesting research going on with their AI, is doing incredible stuff. But again, this is something that hasn't even hit the mainstream yet, because these kind of new materials, they still need to be incorporated in new production processes, right? It takes longer for the engineers to find ways to use these materials or to build machines that can create these materials at scale than it takes for us to find these materials. But now that we can find them so quickly, it's just a matter of time before they will become part of everyday products and also be used in science and engineering to create incredible new tools and technologies that we cannot even begin to imagine yet today. So the next decade is going to be super incredible.
We believe that AI will be about individual empowerment and agency at a scale that we've never seen before, and that will elevate humanity to a scale that we've never seen before either. We'll be able to do more, to create more, and to have more. As intelligence gets integrated everywhere, we will all have superpowers on demand.
And with that, I would like to end my webinar for you. Not only is the next 30 years going to be 20,000 years of technological change, that means it's also going to be 20,000 years of technological medical advancement, to the point where I believe that in 30 years from now, each and every one of us, each and every one of you watching this will probably be immortal. At least don't walk in front of a bus, of course, or in front of a robot. But yeah, I think that in terms of medical science, we'll become to the point where we will eradicate every major disease. We'll be able to help people with any kind of mental disorder, and we will basically be immortal elves that can live 1,000 years or longer. And I know that's something that's very hard to contemplate, but that's where we're heading. And all of you watching this today will be a part of creating that future. Thank you very much. Thank you, Arun, for inviting me. And if any of you have any questions, of course, find me on social media and let me know. If you're watching this later on YouTube, of course, don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you find value in today's content, please leave a comment for the algorithm to show this to more people. And with that, I wrap it up. Mr. Metaverse signing off. And like they say in the Netherlands, see you later.